Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to this webinar. This is the first of three in a mini series of webinars designed to share some hints and tips and help you through the tax season. During this webinar, I'll be focusing on data entry, how to speed it up, how to make sure errors are not made by simply rekeying data, and along the way I'll be sharing a few hints and tips. The webinar will run for approximately 30 minutes. You are able to submit questions. There is a Q&A panel as part of the webinar, and you can also chat with other attendees. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared with you afterwards. If there is no or not enough time at the end to answer all of your questions, we will be coming back to you afterwards as well. So a little bit about me. I am Lee Bennett. I am Head of Pre-Sales at Wolters Kluwer Tax and Accounting in the UK. And my primary role is to meet with and perform demonstrations to our customers and prospects. I've been with the business for just over 22 years, and I have been within the accounting industry for probably 26 or 27 years. So very much experienced in the way of the world and how the tax returns are put together, and obviously how the tax season works as well. With that, I'm going to dive straight into personal tax. And probably the first thing I'm going to mention is the home pages that we have available to us within CCH Central. You'll see on my home page at the moment, I have a to-do list showing me all the tasks that are assigned to me. And I've got some graphs that's coming from our practice management solution rather than specifically tax. But the first thing I'm just going to mention before we dive headlong into CCH Personal Tax is the dashboards. It is technically possible to have as many dashboards as you require, both at practice level and individual user level. The standard default is to provide you with up to 4 dashboards, or home pages as we call them. You can see in my case I've got quite a few for different scenarios, depending on the information that I need to have at my fingertips. Obviously, starting with something like a to-do list will focus my attention on the areas that I need to go to and which clients need my assistance, as it were. You'll see that I've got mine listed by due date, so the most urgent or overdue will be at the top, probably about half of the list that I've got. It's also worth mentioning, hopefully you can see, and you'll be familiar with this anyway, but all the client names down the left-hand side are all hyperlinked. So once you have a task available to you, you can simply click on the name of the client to take you directly into that particular client record. Now I'm just going to go to my Find Client screen. This is available by clicking on the Clients button on the toolbar. And actually, this is the second little tip that I'm going to give. Now, when CCH Central is first installed, so this is probably for newer users of the software, but it may well impact any experienced users. But it is actually possible to place the toolbar either at the top of the screen or the bottom of the screen, and you'll see that we've got a few options, well, 3 different options as you can see: a toolbar chooser, dock top and dock bottom, and simply right-clicking on the toolbar will enable you to move it around. The toolbar chooser actually allows you to deselect certain buttons, or all of the buttons if you wanted to. So again, depending on your roles and responsibilities within the practice, if you are spending most of your day maybe going through CCH Personal Tax and you have other toolbars available to you or other buttons available to you, it might be worth switching them off just to focus your attention. Clicking on the Clients button will take it to the Find Client screen. Obviously, from within here, you can find any client record that you're looking for just by typing in part of the client name or the client code. The system will show you results, and you'll see down at the bottom of the screen, I'll get a little preview of some of the client-specific information, the address, any relationships, any notes that are held within the client record itself. And obviously, the idea behind this is to, I guess, stop you having to go all the way into the client record if you just want to get some brief information out. Also worth mentioning that the The columns that you can see within my screen, again, you can choose those. If I were to right click, we have the option for field chooser, which allows me to personalize the information that I'm looking at. Not only, I guess, obvious things like who the partner is, who the manager is, the UTR, the telephone, the mobile, but if you have any extra fields available within CCH Central, and you want those extra fields to be available to you when you're just searching for a client record, and things like Christmas card, AML checks, as you can see on mine, preferred method of communication I've got there as well. It is really useful to be able to do that. From here, obviously, you can go and access a client record in the normal way. Just double click on it. It will take you through to the record within CCH Central. And again, there's an element of personalization within here. So first of all, again, if you right click on the tabs, any of the tabs, there is a tab chooser, which allows you to, again, select or deselect certain tabs that you do or you don't want to see. Again, personal preference, depends what your role is within the practice as to what tabs you wish to use, and maybe which tabs the practice as a whole wishes to make use of as well. There's no point showing information or showing tabs where you're not getting any use out of it. The other little tip within here is the tabs can also be moved to change the position where they appear on the screen. So you'll see on my case, I'm starting off with the main tab and the addresses and then the profile associated, etc., etc. But it is actually possible, and we can do this just by highlighting. So I'm going to click on tax returns in this case and move it up a little bit. And if I move it up, you'll see that the tax returns tab will actually move, in this case, to the left or to the right, depending on where I've clicked it. Click and go OK, we'll secure it there, and that will appear there for every client for that particular user. So if, for example, you specifically used CCH personal tax, you might want that to be at the top of the list, so it's always the first tab that opens. Now, I've already gone into my client's tax return, so here's a list of all the tax returns that I've got all the way back to 2014 onwards. Again, clicking on the hyperlink will take me directly to the summary tab, as you can see. Now, a few things just to mention about this. On the left-hand side, we have the hopefully familiar-looking tax return data entry menu. You'll notice on my case, though, I'm only showing sources of income that contain data. At the top of the screen, I've decided to hide unused sources. So it makes data entry that little bit quicker if you're a type of user that prefers to go through the data entry menu and work their way down. Obviously, it is also possible to view the tax return on screen and use that as your data entry menu almost. You just simply go from page to page, finding the relevant box, double clicking, and it will take you through to the underlying data entry screen. The tax calculation, we can show that as a full screen tab if you prefer. So we can click on the preview, it will open it up in a new tab. And again, remember, hopefully this was covered in some kind of training that you would have had, or the e-learning. If you right click on any of the tabs that you have currently open within CCH Central, CCH Personal Tax, there is an option to detach. So if you are using multiple screens, 2 screens or 3 screens, however many screens that you've got, you can move any of the tabs from one screen to another, just like you can with most of the modern web browsers these days. So you can physically be viewing something and doing something at the same time. Obviously, with something like the tax calculation, because it is a live tax calculation, as you're doing your data entry, you'll see the impact of it separately on a screen, but you'll see that in real time. If you don't happen to have multiple screens, you can still get the same effect, depending on how big your main screen is, by splitting it into either horizontal tab groups or vertical tab groups. Now, when it comes to kind of speeding up data entry, and as I said, not having to rekey the information, there's various sources that we can link to get to that information. Some of them will be external from CCH Personal Tax, the CCH world. So, for example, we can link out into HMRC and the digital tax account. some of them will come from the rest of the suite. So I'm going to go through a few different scenarios to get there. The first one I'm going to look at is getting data into business tax. So this is going to be for self-employment. Now, in my case, we do also produce the accounts for this particular person, Mr. Jack Smith. So within accounts production itself, I'm just going to take you there. Down the left-hand side, you'll see I've got an option here for sync with open integration. Open integration is a module of our cloud application, CCH OneClick, which allows us to dynamically connect and retrieve transactions that have been posted into bookkeeping applications, the likes of Xero, QuickBooks, FreeAgent, and others, including our own Twinfield. The idea is, obviously, again, hopefully, you're not having to rekey any of the transactions or the trial balance manually into accounts production to get the information there. Now, you'll see by the side of my option at the moment, sync with open integration, there's the little number 2, and that just tells me there's 2 transactions that can be synced directly into accounts production, or synced out of accounts production and back into the bookkeeping application. The system obviously does allow you to put year-end adjustments in and sync those back. Now, today, this isn't the focus of today's webinar, just to show you the information that we've currently got within accounts production itself. It's also worth mentioning as well, though, that you can import transactions and trial balances from any other application that allows its data to be exported as a CSV file. So if it's not one of the cloud applications that I've mentioned, and it's something else, as long as you can get it out into a CSV or an Excel format, you can import directly into accounts production. And pretty much as soon as it's in accounts production, it is then available to personal tax itself. Now, actually, before I go and run the sync, if I go back into my client record, one of the tabs that I've got available to me is tax links. And this tells the system, and it's down to the user to determine their preference, I guess, or the practice to determine their preference, is to, do you want the systems to be linked, and how automated do you want the sync to run from one application to another? You'll see in my case, there's a few different options within here. Am I linking or syncing from an investment application? In this case, I'm going to be syncing to CCH, CGT, and dividend scheduling. Other applications that we have within the suite are available. Some of you may have heard of SecTax. Some of you may have heard of and be using trust accounts. So each one of those does have an investment side to it, which allows you to post dividends or run dividends through a data feed, and also a CGT calculation element, and those can then be synced directly into personal tax, obviously for the completion of the tax return, or even trust tax. When I say personal tax, I also mean CCH trust tax as well. Now, down at the bottom, I've enabled my links from CCH accounts production. I've actually not got that one running automatically, and you'll see the effect that that has in a moment or two. So I am enabling the accounts production link. I am, in this case, also allowing the draft accounts. The accounts at the moment, as they stand within accounts production, I haven't finalised them, but I still want to use the data to produce, albeit it might be a draft text computation. I want those to be available as well. Now, where we see the impact of that is if I go back into the summary screen, is hopefully it'll be fairly obvious on here. For those of you that don't use the sync already, there's a few items down at the bottom of the screen. The linked portfolio transaction data is not up to date. Click here to update. The linked R185 data is not up to date. Click here to update. And I've also got an option within the errors and exceptions that the CCH accounts production data is available for this particular client for their accounting period. Select this message to update business tax automatically. Now, I've been reminded of those because of the options that I've left on the tax links tab. Just as personal preference, I would always prefer to be alerted to the fact that data has been entered elsewhere and is available for personal tax. If, however, you as a user prefer, you can get the sync to run automatically. And literally, as soon as you go into the summary screen, the system will then go away to whichever applications you've got it linked to, and it will go and retrieve the data. So in my case, I'm just going to run the business tax one first of all, and you'll see profit from self-employment has come in 7337. All of the underlying entries are still there. They'll be available within business tax. You'll see I've got the include estimated values icon become available, and that's there because it is containing draft data. If I go into my clients, into business tax, into the accounting period, you'll see the information that's come across into the obviously the correct locations. Turnover, I've got some other income, and then mainly indirect expenses, and there'll be some information within the balance sheet. Now, you'll notice on this particular screen, and this seems to catch a few people out, that where information has been imported in, those boxes are then greyed out. So you can't just simply, if they do need to be amended, you can't simply just click into those boxes and make the amendment on this particular screen. But you can click on the hyperlinks by the side of the expense items or the income items and make any amendments here, both to the amount and obviously if any of the items need to be made disallowable. Disallowable items, by the way, they can actually be made within accounts production, and they would come through into personal tax as well. Again, from experience, from training and demonstrations that I've carried out over the years, it seems to be the tax people that prefer to make the adjustments for the disallowable items, rather than necessarily the people that are producing the accounts. But it makes no difference to the system, it's whichever you prefer. So there's business tax. I've got some information in. My next port of call is going to be income from UK securities. Now, there's actually two methods of getting data automatically into these particular areas. I've mentioned one already, and that's if you use one of our investment ledgers, CGT and dividend scheduling, set tax, or trust accounts. And this is where down at the bottom of the screen, you'll get the message, the linked portfolio transaction data is not up to date. Click here to update it, and we do exactly that. You'll see it's updating the link from, in this case, CGT and dividend scheduling, and the information will come across. Now, again, today's webinar isn't focused on CGT and dividend scheduling as a product in its own right, but if I just nip back into my client record, you'll see it is just another tab that can sit within CCH Central. It is a chargeable module within our suite. And you'll see here it's brought across dividends from foreign companies and some dividends from UK companies as well. Those will appear in exactly the same way. All we're doing is automating the delivery of the data within the standard data entry screens. But this actually takes me to one of the other areas that you can use to automate this particular area, and that's by using the FTSE 350 data feed. Now, this one is included automatically within your license for CCH Personal Tax, so there's nothing stopping anyone from using it. Obviously, as the name suggests, it does only cater for the top 350 company and the dividends that they've made. Now, first time round, if you've not used this already, there will be an element of a little bit of data entry. You need to tell the system what the holdings are, but they will roll forward from year to year. System will take you through a little bit of a wizard. So on if you like, screen 2, stage 2, the system will then evaluate and show you how much by way of dividends should have been received. You'll see there for 3i, for example, we have 1,000 on both payment dates. You can see the dividends that have been paid and obviously the amounts that should have been received. It is possible to edit those. Sometimes there is little rounding differences depending on obviously the quantity and the amount that's been paid. It is also possible, obviously there you can see an option to delete the information. We're going through again, hitting next. The system will then show you how many dividends have then been posted and click finish. And again, the entries will automatically update within your main data entry screens. Technically, they can again still be edited from within here if necessary. The next couple of items, I'm going to take you out into CCH One-Click. I've mentioned this a couple of times. This is our link to allow you to, I guess, start digitalizing the information that is held elsewhere by some third parties. I've mentioned one already. Open Integration is a module of CCH One-Click, which allows us effectively to connect and retrieve the data from bookkeeping applications. But it is also possible to retrieve the data from other third-party sources. HMRC I've mentioned as well as part of the digital tax account. Now, if you are not currently a subscriber to CCH One-Click, you can still have, and hopefully you'll still see this, a DTA button upon your toolbar within the summary screen within personal tax, which will retrieve the information, but it will prepare the information in a report. And that report you can download, obviously, you can show it on screen, but that would need to be then posted directly as manual data entry within the tax return. If you are a subscriber to CCH One-Click, we can take that a little bit further, or one stage further really, by automating the data entry. So you'll see here I've got an option, please ensure the client's tax return is closed before clicking send to tax return. So we can just view the information. We can just view the information that appears on the screen, but you do have an option, as you'll see in a moment or two, to transfer that information back into personal tax. To do that, the system is basically saying you can't be in the tax return at the same time. So I'm going to just close out of there. Go back to my client's screen. Go to the tax returns, so I can access it in a moment or two. Now, what the system will then be doing is going off to CCH One-Click. It will be logging me in. It will be going to find the client that I'm working in, obviously in this case, Mr. Jack Smith. It will be taking me to the digital tax account area, and it allows me then to select the tax year that I want to go and have a look at. So I go into 2021. You'll see effectively two panes on this particular screen. Down the left-hand side, we've got the information that's currently available to us from HMRC. Obviously, the common question that crops up with us is, when does HMRC make this information available to us? It should, fingers crossed, be pretty much there by now. There is a little bit of a time lag, normally around the employment income. They don't really start populating that area, I think, until after P11D season. But now that's over. Most of the data should be there, but we don't have any control over that. It's what HMRC allows us to retrieve at that point in time, or at this point in time. On the right-hand side, you'll see another column of figures. This is the information that is currently posted within personal tax itself. So the idea is we can scroll up and down, we can have a look to see what information we've already got, and you'll see mine's fairly bare at the moment, and what information is available to us. Now, the user can make the choice of taking individual elements of that data. So if we decided we need that, and if we decided we need that, you can see I'm just obviously ticking the boxes. Or it is possible to use all of that particular section within the tax return. You'll see all of the ticks become available. And it's also then possible to use all of the sections within the tax return, which will effectively tick all of the boxes where there are currently crosses, for example. Down at the bottom of the screen, it is possible to export the information as a PDF if you wanted to keep it on a file, or maybe even share it with your client. But there is the option then to send that directly to the tax return. Pressing the button will send. It will take a minute or so for it to kick in, to take the information effectively from from the web, from the internet, from within CCH OneClick over to personal tax. Now, it is possible to actually take that one step further. We have developed a digital data request app and a digital data review app, which allows you to collaborate with your clients to request information from them, rather than, I guess historically it would have been paper-based. Maybe they'd send it back, maybe they wouldn't. They send that now via a web page, and information from there can then be reviewed on screen again from within CCH OneClick, and again taken back into personal tax should you so wish to do so. Again, the choice is completely up to you guys. So going back into my summary screen within my client's tax return, you'll now see that pay from all employments, because I've only ticked that, that one section, that pay from all employments will have come through. And again, kind of what we're doing is automating the data entry that we have within here. If there were any benefits to be brought through, those would be brought through as well. And actually, it's worth me mentioning, you can actually import benefits from BDO P11D software as well. If you've not already got that, or if you have, it's worth mentioning that that information can be exported and imported to automate your data entry as well. Now, that pretty much actually brings us to the close. We've got 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to check out some questions. We've only had one at the moment. Can the dividends of a private company be imported from accounts production directly into tax return data? Unfortunately, at the moment, it can't. We don't process the dividends kind of in that way within accounts production. They are posted to a nominal ledger rather than allocated to an actual individual within accounts production. So private company dividends would have to be entered manually within CCH personal tax. Okay, that's the only question that I had. So just to kind of wrap up, we've seen enough of my face for the moment. There's your questions. Where to next? There's a few different options. If you want to learn more about CCH personal tax and any of the products that we have within our suite, we have a customer community. It's an online area to allow you to ask questions of us and ask questions to each other as well from other users, other practices out there. Also giving you information and access to our e-learning portal as well, so video tutorials. We do have a professional services department for, I guess, live training, in-person training, but obviously remote at the moment. Lots of products information, again, within the customer community stroke user docs. And there is an area dedicated to getting on board with CCH OneClick as well, if that's an area that you wanted to have a look at. Thanks for joining us in this short webinar. Remember that there are 2 other webinars within this series, same time next week and the week after that. Again, I hope you can join us. Thank you very much.